Joining us this evening on the Star Spangled Banner is Selectman Greeley. Kevin, if you would, please rise. Thank you very much, Mr. Greeley. Hello. Hi. So this evening we have the Minuteman out here selling us baked goods again. They're really delicious. You should buy some. We're making good progress. If I have the floor, please. You're talking quiet and bring it out in the hall. Yep, that means you, Diane. All right, yeah, we're making good progress. We're almost done with the budgets. After that, we just have a few more articles. If we're judicious with our time and our questions and don't get up and repeat what the guy before you said, maybe we can finish tonight. That would be pretty fun. So, you can just get up and say, I agree with the person before me instead of repeating the whole thing again. Or you can move the question. Any town meeting members who have not yet been sworn in, please rise. Okay, seeing none, everybody must be sworn in. Let's do our test vote. Everyone get your clicker out. Okay. Here's our question. Did Mahatma Gandhi begin his nonviolent crusade in South Africa? 1 for true, 2 for false. Go ahead and vote. Did he begin his crusade in South Africa? 1 for true, 2 for false. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking to see if someone returned their clicker. People have been bringing their clickers home. We have to hunt them down and make them bring it back. One person who brought it home doesn't have any contact information. She's here this evening. She brought it back. Good. The answer is Mahatma Gandhi first used nonviolence against British rule in South Africa, then applied his tactics to India. That's a good question. Okay, I recognize the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Coro.
Joe Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen.
Coro, I'm sorry, Joe.
It is moved that if all the business of the meeting is set forth in the warrant for the annual town meeting is not disposed of at this session, when this meeting adjourns, it adjourns to Wednesday, May 10th, 2017 at 8 o'clock p.m.
All in favor, please say yes. Opposed? So moved. Any announcements or resolutions? Mr. Hayner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Hayner, Precinct 2. I would like to invite you all to a real town meeting on May 23rd. The third grade Thompson students will be doing a mock town meeting. You'll see how it really should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayner. Any other announcements or resolutions? Miss?
Susan Stamps, Precinct 3, member of the Tree Committee. I just wanted to announce that the state just did announce that Arlington got a tree grant, one of 9 given to municipalities in the Commonwealth, and we're going to use the money to conduct Arlington's first ever tree inventory. So we're very excited, and we want to thank Mike Rademacher for being a great support for this project. My message, though, is that we do need volunteers, so anybody in the meeting or watching on TV, if you're interested in spending just an hour or a day or whatever going around town with a smartphone and a really cool app to help us with the tree inventory, please go to the Tree Committee page on the town website and email us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stamps. Any other announcements or resolutions?
Deanne Dupont, Precinct 13. I'm wearing my Sustainable Arlington hat. This Saturday is Community Collection Day at the DPW from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And for the reuse that they're collecting are bicycles, gently used toys, children's books, and children's clothing, building materials, medical equipment such as wheelchairs, and adult books. Now, these are ones that they want to have that can be reused. Don't bring dirty or broken items. You can take textiles to Goodwill, even if they have stains or tears. Other items that they're collecting are medical sharps and paper shredding. And if you have an outdated or inefficient dehumidifier, the Mass Save program is giving $30 gift certificates if you bring them in. The other items that are being recycled on Saturday are sneakers, bulky, rigid plastic, foam, scrap metal, including fire extinguishers and propane tanks up to 20 pounds, rechargeable lithium, nickel, cadmium, and lead acid batteries. Alkaline batteries should be just tossed in your trash. Redeemable bottles and cans that will be collected by the Arlington High School Save Club, and electronics. And monthly, the recycling center is open to collect your styrofoam, rigid plastics, and scrap metal. And any day, Monday through Friday, that normal business hours, they will accept electronics. And most electronics are free to dispose of at the DPW, except that monitors, TVs, and laptops do have a fee. And we're going to be voting on the budget soon, and the more we recycle and get out of our trash, it does reduce the weight that we're charged for our trash. And now I'm changing hats. This is a reminder that tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock is a film on titled Expired Food Waste in America. And once again, if you're concerned about trash and the cost of disposing items, in Massachusetts, 25% of the weight of trash is wasted food. So you can help the town and the Commonwealth if you reduce the amount of your wasted food. So if you come to the film, you might learn some more information about it. And if you need a flyer to remind you, there's some in the back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. DuPont. Any other announcements or resolutions? Seeing none. Reports of committees.
Julie Brazil, Precinct 12, and Chair of the Vision 2020 Standing Committee. I move that town meeting receive the report of Vision 2020.
All in favor? So received.
I just want to do a quick update. For those who don't know, one of the biggest projects Vision 2020 tackles each year is the annual town survey, which is mailed with the town census in January. This year it was mailed to 19,350 households. Most years, we have been able to complete scanning all the surveys that were returned before town meeting, but this year we had some delays, and so our report only reflects the first 3,000 scanned responses. We have paper copies of our memo on the back table, which summarize some significant updates from Vision 2020 and the partial survey results. The paper copies do not include all the bar charts that were sent in the PDF, because I just can't kill that many trees for partial data. The longer report does include all the charts and has been posted on the town meeting page of the website. I will also note that even the partial results still represent 15% of households in Arlington. So it's a big project and very useful information for the questions, the groups that ask the questions. And of course, we're grateful to the many residents who take the time to complete and return their survey every year. I guess I should also put in a brief pitch for working on the survey. It is a lot of work to draft and scan and analyze 6,000 or 7,000 pieces of paper every year. So in the fall, we hope to do a little publicity and outreach and form a committee that can really take on that project and dedicate some time and energy to it. And if you see articles or emails and would like to get involved, it's a lot of fun, it's very interesting, and we'd love to have the help. So shifting gears from the practical to the visionary, which is kind of built into our name, I would like to invite everyone in Town Hall or watching from home to think about how Vision 2020 has impacted you. People don't always know it's Vision 2020 when they participate in a project, but we sponsor or partner in or fund or staff a wide range of things every year, including Candidates Night and this year's meeting for all precincts, the Transformer Painting Project, and the workday coming up at Spy Pond. But in addition to these kinds of concrete projects, Vision 2020 is fundamentally about change. Vision 2020 proposed the creation of the Human Rights Commission years ago. And this year, Arlington Public Art will leave our umbrella and become an advisory committee to the Commission on Arts and Culture, which is a good fit for them. Results of the annual survey can be used to guide things as specific as changes to the library hours. So it's hard to explain sometimes who and what we are, because we are many things, and everyone seems to participate, to experience Vision 2020 a little differently. I get asked a lot, what exactly is Vision 2020? And I think my answer evolves over time. This year, I think our most important task is to facilitate the flow of information between the town, local government, and the people who live and work here. Appointed members of boards and committees and commissions, employees of the town, and elected officials, including all of us in town meeting, function best when there is a sense of partnership and when we involve as many people as possible in developing ideas and talking about how to make them happen. So I hope everyone will be involved in one way or another with Vision 2020 over the next few years. Just so you get an idea of the groups that are currently functioning, Vision 2020 consists of the Standing Committee, the Diversity Task Group, the Education Task Group, the Fiscal Resources Task Group, the Reservoir Committee, Spy Pond Committee, and Sustainable Arlington all comprise the Environment Task Group, and we have members of Vision 2020 who help plan and execute governance task group events like the orientation for new town meeting members or Candidates Night. Myself, the members of the Standing Committee, and the chairs of all these groups are happy to talk with you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a committee report?
Mr. Moderator, I'm Ann LaRoyer from Precinct 17, and I'm the chair of the Open Space Committee. I move that the Open Space Committee's report be received.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed? Oh, it is so received.
Thank you very much. The committee's report is included in the town's printed annual report, so I haven't made copies for tonight. You can look at it there. Saving trees also. However, this is what it looks like. This is the open space and Recreation Plan, which was published in 2015. It covers from 2015 to 2022. This is one of the main projects of the Open Space Committee, which is updated every 7 years now. And I wanted to just let new members and remind old members about the plan. It's on the town's website, and printed copies are available in many of the town offices, the planning department, and at both libraries and so forth. So I hope you will take a chance to look at it. The plan presents an expanded inventory and description of all of the town's open spaces and recreational facilities, documents infrastructure and maintenance needs, and it establishes a set of goals and objectives to meet these needs over the coming years. It's a very extensive report, as you can see by the heft of this booklet. And there's a lot of information in there, so I hope you'll take a look. Among the goals is to increase public awareness and accessibility and community stewardship of our valuable open spaces. To that end, last year, we worked with the technical GIS staff and the planning department to create our own open space app. Very high-tech here. It's called Experiencing Arlington's Open Spaces. And this is also available on our town's Open Space Committee website. You can download it to your smartphone or tablet or whatever and walk around town. It features maps, photographs, internal trails, and short descriptions of 19 of major open spaces that exist all around town, including water bodies, parks, recreation areas. And this year, we have a new initiative. It's called Take a Walk, A meaning Arlington, capital A, Take a Walk. And this is to encourage residents to get out and walk around our town on safe and easy routes that connect various open spaces and recreational sites within a 1 to 2 mile radius. So our first map that our committee worked on focuses on East Arlington. And there are copies of this map at the back of the room. This is what it looks like, just printed on an 8 by 11 sheet of paper. But this also is on our website, and it has a QR code, so you can go there and download it also. It suggests routes for walking around to connect various open spaces within these short radii. And we're working on similar maps that will cover the center and the heights, both sides of the heights. And we'll be posting all of these also on our website eventually, once they get done. So it's spring. I hope you'll take your families, get out, walk around town, visit our open spaces, and enjoy all that Arlington has to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, Mr. Tosti.
I move that Article 3 be laid upon the table.
All in favor of laying Article 3 upon the table, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Article 3 is on the table. That brings us back to the education budget under Article 33. There's a gentleman over here behind Mr. Schlickman, right?
Thank you, Dave. I have some slides. So I'm Len Carden, Precinct 20, former member of the Finance Committee and a school committee member, but I'm speaking for myself this evening. I wanted to take a few minutes to respond to Chairman Tosti's opening remarks in the context of the school budget. Mr. Tosti highlighted the looming financial challenges and stated that the Finance Committee was focused on not adding things into budgets. Although I appreciate the financial challenges faced in a mostly residential built-out town under Proposition 2.5, I and many others believe we are not spending adequately on our schools in light of the huge enrollment increases that we've had. I will share two of the several indicators of this. which show that despite the generous funding increases provided in our town budget over the last few years, these increases have not been enough to keep up with the enrollment growth. So the first is per pupil expenditures. As you see in the chart, this is a measure that is measured by the state. It measures everything that the town spends on schools, including insurance and retirement payments from the town budget, but it excludes capital costs. While Arlington has been continuously below the state average, and I'm certainly not expecting us to match the average or match the spending that's done in towns like Lexington or Needham or whatever, it is troubling to me that we've declined from typically spending about 95% of the state average to 90% in the last few years, and this is largely due to the enrollment growth eroding the funding that we are getting. So we did adjust the formula last year. That will help a little bit. We'll probably go up to 91% this year, but it's still far from where we were just a few short years ago. We've also let our elementary class sizes increase. We had 19.6 on average back in FY08. That was under the previous multi-year override plan. This year we have 21.4 per class. That's only 2 students on average more, which might not sound like much, but it does put a lot of our classes, 20% of our classes have more than 24 students, which is quite crowded. So we also have a new 6th grade school opening next year, which is going to add significant costs that's not allocated in the current formula. So how can we possibly add more money to the school budget in light of the challenges that were presented? Next slide, please. It's important to note first that while adjustments have been made in the long-range plan, it still is quite conservative overall. As just one example, auto excise, which is something Mr. Tosti mentioned as being impacted by a possible recession. Our budget this year is carrying $4 million for that. Last year we received $4.9 million. So we do have some receipts not fully reflected in the long-range plan by design because it is conservative, but that also is making the plan show things to be a little bit more worse than they actually are. Next slide. And second, I think the way that it was framed last week was a bit of a false choice, because we could pursue an earlier override that results in a much lower percentage increase that would allow for increased spending in necessary areas. We're in a novel situation because we've been very fortunate enough with employees changing their health plans and other factors that we've built up this huge amount in the override stabilization fund. But the problem is the larger the fund, the bigger the cliff we fall off if we wait to the very end to seek an override. As you can see on the chart, which is the blue line is the running balance of the override stabilization fund. The previous override is the first bump there. It was a 5-year plan that was stretched to 6 years. And the last override plan, which is shown in red, was supposed to be a 3-year plan. And we ended up going way up because of the things I already mentioned. But in both cases, the plan would have remained, the fund would have remained under $5 million, so that when you get to the end of the period, you'd have to do another $5 million override to get back up to where you were. Under this current path we're on, because we got so much money, when we go over that cliff, we have a $10 million hole to fill right away. So next slide, please. So I played around with some numbers. My numbers are rough, and they're a little bit different than the rough numbers that Mr. Tosti used. But clearly, he's right. If we wait until FY21, we have to seek a huge override, by my calculation, 12%. But if we went for an override next year in FY19, it's a much more manageable amount. We can stay well under the 10% and still have additional funds that we might need. So we have a challenge to face. I look forward to working over the next year with Mr. Curo and the Board of Selectmen. They are the ones that have to decide when or whether to put an override on the ballot, and with the Long-Range Planning Committee, the Finance Committee, and all of you, because this is a very important decision for our town to make as we approach this. And while I appreciate the Finance Committee's request not to worsen the situation by adding additional spending to the long-range plan, I do think that many of us in town and in this room would support increased spending and increased taxes where necessary to avoid shortchanging our growing schools and for other necessary town services. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carl Wagner, Precinct 11. I move that we terminate debate on the question.
On budget
Sorry,
23, education.
On the education budget.
Okay, with motion to terminate debate in the education budget. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. My opinion, it is a two-third vote. Well, you 5 people have to arise to challenge me. Okay, 5 people arose. So, we're going to use the clickers to see if we terminate debate by 2/3. If you want to terminate debate, press 1. If you want to continue debate on the budget, press 2. If you want to terminate, 1. If you want to continue discussing it, press 2. It does loses. So the next lady is this woman over here, the 3rd row back. Yep. Pass. Mr. Tully?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Tully, Precinct 14. At the end of last Wednesday night's session, a few of us that had the temerity to ask some questions about the budget were admonished by a particular school committee member. And I'd just like to point out that... excuse me, Mr. Moderator. Do I not have the floor?
Sir, he has not... He has spoken properly. Let him say his point.
We're constantly reminded that this body is not a rubber stamp and that we're the appropriations body for this town. In a matter of several minutes, we're going to spend $152 million of taxpayer money. If any member of this body believes that he or she needs additional information in order to properly cast his or her vote and make it an informed vote, no matter how insignificant it may seem to a particular member of the school committee, I would argue that it's not... Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Schlickman, please.
Mr. Schlickman, please, you'll have your point. He has not personally insulted you. He has brought up a valid point. You did admonish us the other night. You and I had words about that. Please let him continue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I appreciate if the same courtesy I gave Mr. Schlickman would be extended to me.
Now, let's keep it on the subject, Mr. Tully.
If any member of this body believes that he or she needs information, no matter how insignificant it may seem to anybody else, I would argue that it's not only that individual's right to have that information, it is their duty as a representative town meeting member. And I would hope that this is the last time that we are admonished for asking questions before voting on a budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This gentleman in the back. Please.
Brendan O'Day, Precinct 14, and I have a slideshow briefly. Great, so we just heard, I just wanted to say, as you consider the budget, I want you to know that we're in much better shape than you may imagine. If you look at this book, and you look at the very last page of this book, you'll find at the very bottom of that page, you'll see the override stabilization fund number, and currently it's at $23,353,303. Next slide. To let you know how we got there, we originally passed a 3-year override, which you know. The green star shows where the override was supposed to end. The red star shows the predictions of the Finance Committee as of 2012 FinCom report. Next slide, please. The smiley face is the happy surprise we received in 2014. The red star is where the override would have to happen. So the red star is where the override is going to be necessary. And that's the prediction as of the 2013 FinCom report. The green star up top is where they predict the next amount will go. Next slide, please. That's a happy face surprise again, $2 million or so. Still, 2019 is when we would be looking at the override as of the 2014 prediction. Next. The 2015 prediction starts to go into my writing up there. There's another happy face and another shift of the red star all the way to 2021. Now, that's a huge shift from the 3-year override that we originally had. Next slide, please. As of last year, we got another happy face surprise. The budget was still, the thing was still adding money. We were getting wonderful conservative estimates, and we still are told that the override is going to be necessary in 2021, and we're going to fall off a cliff. Next slide, please. Currently, the smiley face at the top is where we are now, and the prediction is a drop dramatically straight down to that red star again, which needs to be taken, I believe, with a grain of salt, because I think that we do a lot better in this town than we give ourselves credit for. We have very conservative predictions, and we do so much better each time we're going to $1 million. And so I just wanted to show the last slide. So consider it's possible that we'll get to this happy place of 2023 is when we actually would need the override. If I had a question, it would be, why is the downslope so extremely severe, and to what extent can we have confidence in that prediction?
Mr. Tosti?
What we're dealing here with the override stabilization fund is cash. It's not revenue. If we had a revenue that would keep up, that's one thing, but we just have cash sitting in the bank. And once you start building up the deficit, so next year we thought we were going to have a deficit this year. It turned out we had a very small surplus, but basically our revenues are growing faster than our expenditures. It's a bad business model, but it's all we have. And once you start getting into that deficit model, and this whole budget of $150 million is growing at a certain level, and the revenues are not, it just starts eating through that money very, very quickly. And that's all I could say. Right now, we will need an override in June of 2020. I think that's been the last couple of years. And
I'd say right now you predict.
And we're also looking that we have not had, I can't emphasize this enough, we have not had a recession since 2008. 2008, we have not had a recession. If all of a sudden, and you see what the state budget is going in now with a significant deficit, if that starts cutting in our local aid, that's really, and that's not in here. Let's emphasize that's enough. That's not in here.
Okay. So I'd just like to say for the new people in town meeting, there's a difference between we will need an override in 2021 is when it predicts in here. There's a difference between we predict that and we actually will need it. So this is the prediction of the Finance Committee. And so far we've had a whole bunch of happy surprises, and I'm hoping that we have a couple more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to discuss education? Mr. Schlickman. Second time.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My purpose of speaking last Wednesday was in no way to admonish anyone in this body, but I think the point is that there were suggestions as why do we do this, why don't we do this, and what is the meaning of a slight difference within a $60 million budget. It's a very difficult thing to answer those kind of questions on the fly on the floor of town meeting. The school committee is a very transparent organization in trying to put forth a tremendous amount of data for this meeting and for everybody in town to consume. All I am saying is that if you want to influence our policy, we are very much open to it. If you want to have an influence in the discussion, if you want to ask questions, we start early in the season. We have multitudes of opportunities. Please, please, please participate. We want you to participate. It was a call to ask you to participate and ask your questions and voice your opinions and have an influence in a very open budget process that I think that I'm proud of, and I think the rest of the committee is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Starr?
Ed Star, Precinct 15, move the question.
Motion to terminate debate on Article 33, Section 23 only. All in favor of terminating debate on the education budget, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. Well, that's a two-third vote. That closes education, brings us to 24, libraries. Someone held libraries. Who wish to discuss libraries? Ma'am. Hi, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jennifer Seuss, Precinct 3, and also member of the school committee. The last couple of years, I've stood up to sort of convey what I had heard of complaints from the Friends of the Fox Library that they had raised a lot of money for Saturday hours, for renovation, and there was some problems spending that money. I'm happy to report that while the final sort of project is not decided, that what I'm hearing from people in the Fox community and from the Friends of Fox is that negotiations are ongoing, that that Andrea is doing a great job, that there's real communication, and I'm very, very pleased to hear that Saturday hours are going to be introduced in the Fox. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Nice, thank you. Anyone else want to discuss libraries? Mr. Paluso.
Ted Paluso, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, you're about to call me out of order because I'm not going to talk about libraries. I'm going to tell you a secret. You can talk about the budget all you want in this room. I don't know how you change it. So I really believe what Paul Schlickman said about the school committee, what the finance committee does hours after hours after hours. That's the place the people in this room want to go and should go to explain what they want to see. Once you have a budget of $150 million, I don't know how you could say, well, we're going to knock off $10 million. What do? Send them all back to redo it? It's too late. So from the standpoint of explanation, great. You can get all the explanation you want. But making changes with the people in this room at this particular time is a highly unlikely thing. So I really think what Paul said makes sense. It makes sense for all of us, not only with respect to the school budget, but to all the budgets. You got to get into it while it's being done. Once it's done, I don't know how you change it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on libraries? Point well taken. Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Warden, Precinct 8. And I'm a big fan of the library. But since the previous speaker diverted from that subject just a little bit, I would like to point out that those of us who've been here for a while have participated in debates and amendments and so on that have changed the budgets that are brought here. The fact that the Finance Committee and they're dear friends of mine, and they do an awful lot of work. I don't know how they do it, and I wouldn't want to be there. But they do a tremendous job, perhaps more than any other body elected or appointed in this town, and they do the best they can. But we are the appropriating body. You know, it's just like that man you all dislike, Mr. Trump, may propose to change the medical plan or to change this, change that. It goes to Congress. They're the guys that vote on it. They're the people that vote on it. So don't forget, we do have that power. If you want to amend the library budget to add something or subtract something, you have that power. I'm not suggesting you exercise it, but you do have the power. Well, not libraries anyway. Maybe something else. That you have not only the power, you have the responsibility, because you are here on behalf of all the citizens of Arlington, all the taxpayers of Arlington, who are going to foot the bill for their ever increasing taxes. So you have the authority, and don't let yourself be told otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another point well taken. Now let's keep it to the budgets on hand. Okay, no one else wants to talk about libraries or anything else? Let's move on. Insurance. Someone wanted to hold insurance. They're passing. Anyone else want insurance? None. Water and sewer. Who wanted to talk about water and sewer? Mr. Jameson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. Very quickly, as I mentioned last evening, there is something called the Long Range Planning Committee, and that meets in the fall, and the manager said that he's going to make that available so you can get an automatic announcement. There's also, we are, compared to when I first moved here, if you want to get more knowledgeable about the budgets, there's the annual report, which was distributed and is also online. There's the annual financial plan that the manager puts out, tells you what they did last year, tells you what they want to do next year. There's the finance committee report, there's the visible budget, and there's the paycheck thing that tells you how we spend our money. So there's a huge amount of information if you want to get more informed about the budget. A quick plug, Ms. Brazil gave it. I know. I'm the co-chair of the Vision 2020 Fiscal Resource Task Group. We look at things like what Mr. O'Day and the gentleman before him spoke of, and we'd love to have you come and join us. We meet every third Thursday at 7:30 in the Senior Center. Contact me at the break if you'd like to get involved. And I do have a water and sewer question.
Okay, good.
I note that the disbursements to the MWRA between the water and the sewer side are up about $600,000. Could we have some, after being flat for several years, could we have some more information about that?
Mr. Rademacher?
Michael Rademacher, Director of Public Works. The numbers in the budget right now are preliminary, so often they do come down for final. We don't have those numbers, unfortunately, for the budget. So typically every year they do come down a bit, so I expect they will be more in line. But any increase is possible from year to year. The numbers with the funds we are charged are based on like a 3-year rolling average. So if there's any one year that the town uses more water or produces more wastewater, that can bump that number up.
Yeah, thanks. I'll look for that next year and then understand that you're budgeting conservatively to make sure we have a surplus in the water and sewer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. Anybody else on the water and sewer? Seeing none, that closes water and sewer. Brings us to recreation. Someone wanted to talk about recreation. Anyone on recreation? Closes recreation, and the last budget was Arlington Youth Counseling Center. AYCC. Who wants to talk about AYCC? Mr. Jameson.
So this is a wonderful enterprise fund that does wonderful things. I'm basically rising to speak. I'm definitely for it. Because it provides an exhibit of something we need to consider going forward. As I've mentioned in previous discussions about the budgets and revolving funds, we need to make sure that when we ask for a grant, when we use revolving funds, or when we have enterprise funds, which are supposed to be self-sustaining businesses that the town that operate within the town's purview, that the health and pension benefits. And I asked Mr. Greco, who gave a wonderful presentation earlier in the meeting, when do pension benefits kick in? And they're set, the retirement board set it so it's the same as health. So if you have more than 18.75 hours a week, we have to pay your health care and some pension costs. And so in the current way this enterprise fund is structured, has been done this for several years, where the pension and health costs are not borne by the financial structure of the enterprise fund. And while the water and sewer is very well covered, the others are all sort of in a mishmash between the two, hence my choice for this one to speak to. Now, you may not know that if we put those costs in and they run a deficit, we have to then pay for that out of the general fund. But the choice has been made over the last several years to just not do that because you're basically running money in a circle. And I would suggest that we need to consider as we go into the cliff, at least building in those costs so that they're visible and transparent, and also so that those costs can be potentially priced into the reimbursement structure for those enterprise funds. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion on the budgets at all? Seeing none, that means we're ready for a vote on Article 33 in whole. As soon as Mr. Glathwood's ready, we're going to take a vote. 1 in favor of the budgets as presented by the Finance Committee, 2 in opposition. Go ahead and vote. 1 for you approve the budgets as presented, 2 you do not want to spend that money. $211 in favor, 0 opposed. It is an affirmative vote, and I so declare it. It's a unanimous vote. That closes Budget Article 33. And Mr. Tosti, can you take 27 through 32 off the table, please?
I move that we take Articles 27 through 32 off of the table.
All in favor of removing 27 through 32 off the table, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It's a vote, and I so declare, and it brings us back to Article 27. Mr. Curo. I get it right?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joseph Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen. You have before you the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen. This is one of, by my count, 4 measures that we are taking up this year that are part of the Municipal Modernization Act. We've already adopted 2. We adopted the Parking Benefits District. We adopted the bond premium. This measure allows us to create a special education reserve fund. We do currently try to cover special education unexpected costs through a stabilization fund. However, it requires, under our current practice, this body to come back together to make appropriations out of the fund. The Municipal Modernization Act, if you accept the recommendation, will allow us to create a reserve fund whereby town meeting will make appropriations into the fund, but the school committee will retain some flexibility if they choose to actually create it to make appropriations towards unexpected costs out of the fund by a vote of the school committee and of the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen respectfully request your affirmative vote on the recommendation. I know that there are members of the school committee who are ready to answer questions on this.
Thank you, sir.
Kiersey Allison Ampe, Precinct 15, School Committee, Vice Chair and Budget Chair Budget. This is the thing that you're voting on. Joe already said most of what I was going to say. I'm going to skip to the 2 things that he didn't mention. If I can get this back. So we've already talked in special town meeting about the stabilization fund that we have. Under Article 15, under Article 5, we discussed and approved the transfer out of money. This account differs because of the way that you can take money out of it, the new reserve account, because it can be approved to remove money to transfer it back into the school's budget. You only need a vote of both the Board of Selectmen and a vote of the school committee. And so because town meeting occurs a lot before the end of the fiscal year, this is much more convenient. The other way that this account is a little bit different, just because you might like to know the background, is that this account comes with a statutory cap, It limits funds to 2% of our net school spending. To give you an idea of how much that is, in fiscal 2016, our actual net school spending was around $65 million, and 2% of that would be around $1.3 million. So, in summary, the school committee respectfully requests your affirmative vote on this account, which will allow us to have a more useful tool with which to manage the volatility of special education expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else on Article 27? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All in favor of recommended vote as presented in your report, please press 1 when ready. If you're against, press 2. 1. $208 in the affirmative, 0 against, unanimous vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 27 and brings us to Article 29.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joseph Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen. You have before you the recommendations for the Community Development Block Grant. This is a program from HUD. I believe it's been about 40 years that Arlington has participated. It's actually year 43 for us. There are a few things that are a little bit unusual about what you have before you. First of all, you're being asked to endorse a plan. The plan for expenditure of CDBG funds is actually put together jointly by the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager's Office. We get a lot of support from the Community and Planning Development Department, Julie Wayman in particular, who is our coordinator on this. This represents really a vital safety net. So this is an endorsement. This has actually been adopted by town meeting, but in the interest of transparency and to allow the opportunity for questions about some of the funding decisions, we do bring this to town meeting. The other thing that you'll find in our report that's a little bit unusual is you'll find that there's a 6-0 vote. Votes on the Community Development Block Grants, the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager cast their votes in support of this. There is a subcommittee that meets. Vice Chair Steve Byrne and Dan Dunn are actually our representatives to the subcommittee that helps to weed through the requests. You'll see on the report that we had about $1.75 million worth of requests and just over $1 million that we were able to fund based on what we have in grant funding from HUD, as well as funds that the CDBG program itself, program income, has been generated. There are 5 specific areas: as rehabilitation, housing, public services, public facilities and improvements, planning and administration. There are guidelines around all of that. I know that the manager and others are ready to answer questions. The only thing I did want to note is that you all may have seen that the skinny budget that was released as part of the federal budget process does propose to zero out the Community Development Block Grant program. So there is a real possibility that this is the last time the town meeting will be taking this vote. Thank you.
Anyone wish to discuss CDBG application? Sir.
Steve Revelak, Precinct 1. Mr. Moderator, I have a question. In the, looking at the CDBG report on page 7, there is a table of requested and designated expenditures. One of the subheadings is planning, and item number 2 is a planning study done by the Department of Planning and Community Development. The planning study is described as planning to implement the HUD rule on affirmatively furthering fair housing, including preparing an analysis of local impediments to fair housing and identifying actions the town will take to address these impediments. Is there someone who could describe more what's involved with this study?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. I can't go, frankly, much
further than the description is provided, but I can tell you that it is actually, it's a requirement of federal law that we update our fair housing plan every number of years. So by allocating this funding, we're able to go through that planning process and meet that funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the CDBG funds? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All in favor of the recommended vote, the Board of Selectmen as provided to us. Please vote 1 for yes, 2 against. 1 for yes, 2 for no. $205 the affirmative, 1 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 28. Brings us to Article 30. Bylaw Amendment, Departmental Revolving Funds Bylaw. Mr. Curo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With your permission, I'd like to just address 30 and 31.
Okay, go ahead. Good idea.
Article 30, which you have before you, this is the last item, which is local acceptance legislation from the Municipal Modernization Act. I would like to note and request, first and foremost, and with thanks to Mr. Fuller, our eagle-eyed town meeting member, he did note 2 areas that warrant administrative corrections. The first is in the first line of the purpose, where it says town/city departments. He noted that we are indeed a town, and this should just say town with a capital T, as appears elsewhere in our bylaws. Lastly, on the tables that appear here, the word board is misspelled and is missing an R, and I would request that be made administratively.
Those changes are made, and they can just be made in all of your booklets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. What this is this allows us to codify within our bylaws the various revolving funds which we, as a town meeting, have oversight of. What we do currently is we come back here every year. We set limits and make appropriations into, or we set limits and guidelines around our revolving funds. There's a whole series of them, and they've been authorized over time at various town meetings. They're not gathered together in one place other than the annual votes that we take. What Article 30 allows us to do is to take all of those, to codify them directly within the bylaws, along with their purpose, who is responsible for them, et cetera, so that they're in one place. So again, this is in the interest of transparency. We'll have the ability to go back and see the full listing of revolving accounts. Article 31, which we have, is the normal article, which we have, which is authorizing and setting the limits on the revolving funds themselves. We do have to do that one more time until the recommendations in 30 are actually adopted. We respectfully request your support of both recommended votes. Thank you.
Jameson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. Mr. Marr, who's the previous town council and member, many years ago, when we were seeking to incorporate the municipal waste bans into the town bylaws, astutely noted that if we wrote an article that said X, Y, and Z, and in a future year we needed X, Y, and Z plus 1, that we would have to change the bylaws to affect that change. Based upon his astute recommendation, we made it such that the DPW can set the rules and regulations as they so see fit. So we don't have to pass a bylaw every time we change a nature of the thing. So my question is, if we pass the Municipal Modernization Act, which codifies everything, which, excuse me, I think is a good idea, if we need to change the spelling of the word board or anything in the bylaw, do we have to pass an article at town meeting to revise or extend or reduce the number of funds?
Mr. Heim or Mr. Pooler?
Sandy Pooler, Deputy Town Manager. The reason we are doing Article 30 is because the state says we have to. So if we want to continue to have revolving funds, we have to have them authorized under the procedures of Article 30. If in the future we wanted to change one of the purposes of one of the 15 revolving funds that are listed under Article 30, we would have to come back to town meeting to change that bylaw.
But we have to.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
They no longer allow us to authorize revolving funds the way they had been in the past.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to discuss 30 or 31? Ms. Mamon, I'm sorry, Ms. Memon.
Serena Memon, Precinct 21. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm up here because I want to know what this private way repairs. I understand there's a change in, there's a reason why that they get a private way is for tax deference and so forth. So I was wondering if somebody could explain why they're getting funds.
Mr. Pooler, can you explain private way repair fund?
From time to time, Sandy Pooler, Deputy Town Manager. From time to time, the town accepts what are private ways, and in order to bring them up to code, so to speak, or our standards, the residents of those streets have to pay for that. That money goes into the revolving fund, which pays for the repairs.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. I'm just puzzled about the energy fund for the Gibbs School. Wouldn't that be covered under the appropriation we made to remodel the Gibbs School? Mr. Moderator, if someone could ask me about.
Ms. Pooler?
Sandy Pooler, Deputy Town Manager. As you will note, there are 16 revolving funds in Article 31 because the Gibbs Energy Fund is there. There are 15 in Article 30 because going forward after next year, we don't expect the Gibbs Energy Fund to exist anymore. But the reason we are asking it to be appropriated and renewed for this coming year under Article 31 is in case there are any sort of leftover bills that we still need to spend out of after June 30th, we can still use that fund for things that happened in the current fiscal year. And then after that, all the energy costs will be paid out of the operating budget for the Gibbs School.
So do you anticipate that the energy fund will be using $96,000? I mean, that seems like a huge amount.
That's a good question. Thank you. No, I don't. What will happen is next year, when it goes out of existence, that money by law then flows into the general fund and becomes part of our free cash next year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. McCabe?
Mark McCabe, Precinct 2. I stand to terminate debate on Article 31 and all matters before it.
On Article 32? 30 as well? We're discussing 30 and 31. Okay, you want to debate? Your motion is for termination debate on Article 30 and 31? 30 and 31. Yes, sir. Okay, let's look at your 4B of Article which? If you can come up to me at the break, we'll make that typo administratively. All in favor of terminating debate on Articles 30 and 31, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? The 2/3 vote, and I so declare it. So we're going to vote on Article 30 first, 30, and then we're going to vote on Article 31 second. All in favor of Article 30, please vote 1 for yes, 2 for no if you're not in favor of it. $204 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative at the vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 30, brings us to Article 31. As soon as Mr. Lathwood is ready. $196 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. And that closes Article 31. Brings us to Article 32. 196. 1. A classification plan. Who wants to discuss it? Anybody? Then, Mr. Curo, do you want to present anything on pay classifications? Article 32? Finance Committee. Mr. Tosti, Article 32? Oh, yes. All right, we're looking at Article 32 in the Finance Committee report. They have 2 amendments. They are striking right. A stricken, 3A is stricken, everything else is renumbered serially underneath those 2. Otherwise, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Leonard, Precinct 17. Mr. Moderator, first off, I'd like to apologize to both you and the town meeting. I've been working on an amendment for this particular article, and without any excuses, I was unable to get copies made up for town meeting, of which I apologize. My question, Mr. Moderator, I have 1 sentence to add under an amendment for this article, and I wonder if I could possibly state that amendment.
Read your amendment, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, basically the amendment states, in the interest of further promoting gender equality in the town of Arlington, it is hereby requested that the town meeting be asked to vote to change the title of Board of Selectmen to the Board of Administration.
Their position reclassification, I don't think that can be made. They're not a...
Mr. Moderator,
may I finish? I don't think we've appropriately warned the town we're going to make that change under position reclassification. I think that would have to be a warrant article in itself, and we'd have to change the Town Manager Act to do that, possibly, Mr. Heim. I don't think we can just do that under position reclassification.
Mr. Moderator...
Wait, I'm getting a legal opinion. Yeah. Do we want to tell them that, why I think it's out of scope?
Mr. Moderator...
Mr. Hine just told me we'd have to amend both the Town Manager Act and the town bylaws. That's not provided under Article 33 in the warrant to the public. I suggest that you come before the selectmen on their next meeting on the 15th of May and raise the possibility for possibly bringing it up in the next fall or next spring annual meeting under appropriate article of its own. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, may I say one
No, I
last
don't
thing?
want to go on, John.
It's in the Town Managers Act.
We're talking about position reclassification.
It is in the Town Managers Act about what can be done as far as classification, and it is also in Title I.
Mr. Leonard, it's not, the public has not been warned by the warrant that we're going to take that step or change the town bylaws in that regard or change the Town Manager Act. I sympathize with the position and the point you're taking. A lot of other towns have done so. I think it's time we did so. But we're not going to do it under Article 32. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
May 15th, Selectmen meet. Bring it up then during open mic. Or whatever they call it. Thank you. Anyone else on position reclassification? Seeing none, we have the first we have the amendment of the Finance Committee to strike number 2A and 2B and renumber all the renumerate all the ones below them. 2A and 3A. And renumber everything below them serially, starting with A. All in favor of that amendment, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? Okay, now we're ready for the main vote as amended for Article 32. All in favor of Article 32, position reclassification, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. $208 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, it's a vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 32 and brings us to Article 38. We have the first recommended vote of the Finance Committee, the Town Manager. It must be the Finance Committee because it's money. $55,000 for appropriate zoning bylaw recodification. Anyone wish to discuss it? Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Very briefly, I'll give you a description of what's being requested here. Similar to the residential study group, there is also a zoning recodification working group that's been working over the course of the past 6 months or so, focused on recodifying the current zoning bylaw. Getting my head around what recodify means, I use terms like update, modernize, but basically it's catching up the zoning bylaw to be consistent with case law and current definitions for uses. So it's an updated zoning bylaw without making any substantive policy changes to the zoning bylaw. There's already a consultant hired. There's a first draft of that zoning bylaw, which will start to have public discussion actually very soon. Leading up to a fall town meeting that we're expecting to have, where we will ask for town meeting to consider adopting a recodified zoning bylaw. From there, we need a portion of this $55,000 request, approximately $15,000, to advertise the changes if they're adopted. To be able to actually change the zoning bylaw, you have to do significant advertisement for it to take effect. And if we're recodifying the entire bylaw, that's a lot of advertisement. So that's why we're asking for $15,000 of this $55,000. The remaining $40,000 is to retain a consultant to look at substantive policy issues within the zoning bylaw. So that would be looking at potentially consolidating and redefining business districts, considering including design guidelines in residential, commercial, and industrial zones, looking at overlay districts, further advancing recommendations of the residential study group, looking at implementing portions of the Arts and Culture Action Plan, and also looking at whether or not we are interested in neighborhood conservation districts. So again, we are working on recodification. We want to bring that recodification to the fall town meeting. We need further funding to advertise that if we're successful in the fall town meeting, and then we're looking for further funding to hire a consultant to begin the process of making recommendations to town meeting on substantive policy changes to our zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to discuss Article 38?
What I think, Deborah Sorotkin Butler, Precinct 19. What I think is a quick question. What the town manager called advertising, it's directed toward Doug Heim. Is that notice and comment funding?
Mr. Heim?
Doug Heim, Town Council. So part of it could be, but the other piece of it is that once the bylaw, a new set of bylaws is passed, it has to be basically put out in acceptable advertising means so that everybody will be able to see not only the initial notice for hearing and things like that, but also the approved product before it takes effect. So every year when we pass zoning bylaw amendments, they have to be advertised in the paper, essentially the entire change that we're making. In this case, we'd be advertising the entire new zoning bylaw, which is quite an expensive process.
So there would be then one set of advertisements to give notice of what's under consideration and any comment meetings, and then a booklet similar to the warrant giving the entire final change in the zoning bylaws?
That's more or less correct. So before the ARB will have to take a vote on any zoning change, and so they would have to essentially put out notices about what the meeting is going to contemplate, take a vote that you guys all get as the recommended vote in action of the ARB, and then once town meeting approves, if town meeting approves a recodification, and the Attorney General's office approves it, then it has to be advertised, the final product as approved by town meeting, to make sure that everybody essentially knows this is the new zoning bylaw.
So then at those notice and comment,
Oh, yeah.
as to,
It'll bend down.
so as to those notice and comment type meetings, that would be the place then if a member of the public has concerns about what might go in to have input, pretty much.
I have two recommendations on that. One is there's nothing wrong with contacting the zoning recodification group in advance and saying these are the things that I am concerned about. And of course, at the ARB's hearings, you'll have an opportunity to see what the proposal is in its final form before it would go to town meeting, comment on it, and propose any changes.
What kind of notice period is there in order for people to set their schedules and attend these actual hearing type meetings? Do you know?
So the first thing that would have to happen, it'd have to go in the warrant. So you'd know in advance, once the warrant closes, that this is going to come up. And then the ARB would advertise, I want to say it's 14 days in advance. They have to let folks know of a contemplated zoning, of a zoning hearing on any changes.
So would they be advertising by email, on the town website, or in the Arlington Advocate? What would you watch for, really?
So typically, they advertise in multiple places. They're afforded some latitude how to do that, but I think that probably the best thing that we can do is we have had a great town website in terms of notices. You can see whatever is on an ARB agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Greg Christiana, Precinct 15. Might I ask, when has this sort of procedure been last or most recently done, and what is the expected cost of doing nothing?
Mr. Chapdelaine? Not sure it's ever been done.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. I believe the date, and I'm sure I'll be corrected by some senior members of town meeting, but I believe the last date of a zoning recodification or new zoning bylaw update was 1975. So long time ago. It was shortly after zoning reform at the state level when the new Uniform Zoning Act passed. In terms of the cost, I
And specific, I mean, not just monetary, but like kind of administrative overhead or hassles to the town.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I would probably best describe the cost is regular lack of clarity and confusion on numerous residents that access the zoning bylaw. At the zoning recodification working group meetings, there are several members who are basically citizens who try to access the bylaw and have time and time again expressed their concern of trying to have a bylaw that's accessible by the public, so that when they go into the building inspector's office or they go to planning, they can have a dialogue about a document that they understand.
Okay, great, thank you. Seems reasonable. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on article? Go ahead. Yeah, raise your hand. Really raise it high, 'cause some people raise it like this and I can't see you.
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. So I have a question as to whether the ARB will actually hold a hearing where the public can comment and ask questions, or if they would just invite the public to one of their meetings, because it's very different. I've attended a number of ARB meetings where the public really isn't invited to comment as the ARB deliberates. So will they be holding a hearing where the public does participate?
Mr. Chaplain?
Can anyone, I don't see the ARB here, so.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Yes, the plan is for the zoning recodification working group to have, they're describing it as having 3 readings. So first reading is within the zoning recodification working group, and then second and third reading, they will have public meetings or public forums. That will be a back and forth with any attendee.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else on Article 38? Sir, Mr.
Peter Fuller, Precinct 20. One of my offspring works in the consulting industry, and I've learned from her that, the money doesn't go far when a client hires a consultant. So I'm wondering if the $40,000 out of this appropriation is going to really be enough to do what we want to do.
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. At this point, yes, we believe through the research and work of the planning director and the planning staff, they do feel confident in that number. We did do a little bit of homework and trying to determine, talking with various consultants about what they thought the scope of work would be to start working on some of those substantive policy changes we mentioned. So we are comfortable with that request.
That's good. This is a big deal, so it's not something to cheap out on, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Agreed. Anyone else on 38? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. Mr. Athwood's ready. Recommended vote of $55,000 is printed in the report. All in favor, please press 1 when the green light goes on. Press 2 if you don't want to spend the money. $206 in the affirmative, 7 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That ends Article 38, brings us to Article 13.9. Oh, no, we got a good 5 minutes. Appropriation parking operating costs. Anyone wish to discuss the appropriation of the parking operating costs? Mr. Fuller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Peter Fuller, Precinct 20. The offsets proposed in this article, the $45,800 or so for the parking budget, is far more than the total increase in the parking budget, 13 of $2,700. The $56,000 for the parking enforcement part of the police budget also seems to be more than the identifiable increases in parking enforcement. So I guess my question is, how did we arrive at these numbers?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. With the creation of this parking fund at the special town meeting last October, and with the implementation of the new street metering technology, the Parking Implementation and Governance Committee, as well as my office, took a look at this, and it became clear that the parking control officers, which are included in the police budget, and the parking administrative staff, which are included in the parking budget but are housed in the treasurer's office, were putting a great deal of time into managing the new metering technology. Quite simply, that the calculation you see there is 50% of the time of the parking control officers is proposed to be taken from this fund, and 50% of the personnel costs associated with the parking budget are proposed to be taken from this fund.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. Second question, the parking meter operations money, what exactly does that include?
Mr. Chaplin, please.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. There's various items that are included in there. Credit card charging fee from both the metering technology and our credit card processor. Software fees associated with the back-end software system that manages the parking technology. Coin collection. We have an outside vendor right now collecting coins from both the metered lots as well as the street meters. We lease the spaces that are adjacent to the library entrance from First Parish, and we also have meter maintenance, routine maintenance fees built into that. And then the largest part is actually our lease payments for the street meters, which were purchased. So the combination of those is what adds up to the $172,479.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies things, but I hope going into the future we can keep as much of this reserved for the parking improvement district that's going to happen as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on Article 39? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All in favor of Article 39 as detailed in the Finance Committee report, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. $203 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. And that closes Article 39, brings us to Article 40. It's 9:30. We'll take our 7-minute break. Go buy good stuff from the Minuteman kids. Come in and take your seats. We now have Article 40 in front of us. Article 40. We have the recommended vote of no action. Anyone have a substitute motion? Seeing none. All in favor of no action, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? Article 40 is no action. We have now before us Article 41. We have the recommended vote of $300,000 as printed by the Finance Committee in their report. Transfer of valuations for real property. Anyone wish to discuss Article 41? Ed? No. Anyone on 41? Seeing none, all in favor of Article 41 is printed in the report of the Board of Selectmen, in the Finance Committee, the Orange Book. $300,000. Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Now, folks, when I say 7 minutes, I'm not joking. Under 55, the negative, 2 against. It's a positive vote, and I so declare it. That brings us to Article 45. Appropriations Committee and Commissions, we want to spend $52,000 for parades and the like. Anyone wish to discuss it? Ms. LaCourte.
Annie LaCourte, Precinct 15. With the moderator's indulgence, I held this article and several others out of the consent agenda in the interest of providing some information to our new members. May I ask all those questions at once for the sake of efficiency?
Yes, please ask your questions. She's
Okay.
looking for explanations.
All right.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask a question on Article 45. We added a new fairly large appropriation for public art for a particular committee, and I was hoping the Finance Committee could explain that decision-making process for the sake of information for the members.
Mr. Tosti.
Fellow town meeting members, about 2 years ago, we heard our first arts type request. It was for public arts to do something down in the East Arlington. And we weren't really sure about this. This was a whole new area that we've been requesting. So finally we gave in and said, okay, we'll appropriate $15,000 to hire a consultant to do some of this. The position was made that it would help encourage some economic development. We weren't sure about that, but we specifically said, okay, we'll help hire the consultant to do this, but we're not going to pay for the actual artwork. You know, throughout history, a lot of the public art has been developed from private donors. And we thought, considering the town's finances, this might be an appropriate place for private donors to actually come in. Well, that went in fine, and all of a sudden this year, like, the arts requests blossomed. And trying to decide between this art project and that art project and this art project was a little much for a finance committee who's, it's not our thing. And so we thought, well, we should have somebody who deals in art and who is an official body of the town decide this. So the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture actually has been around, at least on paper, since like 1990. So there is an official body created by bylaw that is the Arlington Commission on the Arts and Culture. And as part of their presentation is, we're trying to consolidate all of these requests so they come in and be dealt with in a consolidated, orderly, planned action. And so the Finance Committee got together, we talked with people, and we said, okay, let's do this. Instead of appropriating money for all these different art type requests, why don't we give a lump sum to the Arlington Commission on the Arts and Culture, since they're the official town body, and let them look at all the priorities and allocate a certain amount of money for each one, as they, having a certain amount of expertise, decide would make sense for the entire town. And so what we did was, so we took 2 votes actually. So the vote to put all of the money under the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture and have them divvy it out to the other bodies, in this case, the Public Arts, the Poet Laureate, Arlington Alive, and the Arts and Culture themselves, was 10-0. Or actually it was 12-0 or something like that. No, actually it was 18-0. So it was a unanimous vote for the policy of doing that. The 10-8 vote was in the amount of $25,000 because 8 of the members thought that $25,000 was too much. You'd expect that from the Finance Committee. So that's the reason we did it. So the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture can decide if Poet Laureate needs $200 for secretarial work or something like that. And they could decide if the public arts is in the right place to do that. So that's the logic behind doing this.
Great, thank you.
Now, she's going to ask you to define 2 terms that come up a little bit
Yes.
further in the warrant.
So under Article 52, which is our appropriation to other post-employment benefits, for the sake of new members, I would like somebody to explain exactly what other post-employment benefits is and why we must make this appropriation. And then also under Article 56, the same, just for the information of new members, if we could explain what free cash is and how it gets developed. And you have 2 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. It's basically retiree healthcare costs. Our pension costs, we are required by state law to have a pension fund, as Mr. Greco described several sessions ago. Our retiree healthcare costs, we are not yet required by state law to have any type of fund where we pay down our long-term liabilities, but we do accrue those liabilities. So for our retiree healthcare costs, we currently have a liability of about $190 million. So Arlington was one of the first communities in the state that started putting money aside and is still one of the leading communities of the state in terms of putting money aside. So what this appropriation does is add to our OPEB trust fund, which is us beginning to build assets to offset the liability, and in the event the state ever requires us to have a funding schedule, have some money in the bank to start to meet that funding schedule.
Thank you.
Free cash is, generally stated, is the amount of surplus appropriations and, surplus appropriations and surplus revenue at the end of the year. The comptroller goes through a process, looks at all of our appropriations and revenues, turns in a sheet basically to the Department of Revenue, and they certify free cash. We always joke and say it's neither free nor cash, but it's unencumbered funds at the end of the year. The longstanding policy in terms of long-range planning has been using up to 50% of the prior year's certified free cash as an operating revenue.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions under Article 45, reports of committees and commissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sir, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ian Goodsell from Precinct 11. Although I am for the arts and I am for sections A through J of this of Article 45, I find it kind of unconscionable that out of that one line item of a $52,000 appropriation request is for something. I personally think that if we were going to, I find it odd that $25,000 is going to be given to the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture, where for economic development it's only going to get $5,000. I don't have any question. I'm planning on voting for this for most of the sections A through J. I just don't know why we couldn't have separated that out as a separate either article or another line item.
Okay, Mr. Tosti?
Items A through J, that's all they requested.
That really? Okay. Got it. Thanks, Mr. Costa.
Any other questions? Mr. Costa? Mr. Costa?
Barbara Costa, Precinct 10. I'm also on the Arlington Commission on Arts and Culture. I'm not going to go into detail, but just to let you know, it's an unusually high amount of money for us this time, and that's because we are in the middle, actually almost completing a really very thorough action plan for arts and culture for this town. This is like, you remember the master plan? Well, this is way smaller, but we're working really hard on this, and implementing that plan is part of what we're doing. So it's just so you know, look, stay tuned and do come to the June 6th public meeting to where we will give you a final look at the arts and culture action plan recommendations. You will have, everybody in town will have a chance to give some input. We will report what we have, and then we're going to come up with it and be done with it soon. There's a lot going on in the Commission on Arts and Culture. We'll report back. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anyone else on Article 45? Seeing none, we're ready for vote on Article 45. All in favor of the recommended vote is in the Finance Committee report, please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. $198 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That ends Article 45 and brings us to Article 48. We have the sum of $55,000 for water bodies. Anyone wish to discuss water bodies? Mr. Tremblay.
Mr. Moderator, I was just curious if anybody ever studies the amount of salt in our water bodies.
I'm sorry, sir, to hear the question. You have to get right into the mic.
Ed Tremblay, Precinct 19. Mr. Moderator, does anybody ever study the amount of salt in our water bodies?
No, I don't think so. Mr. Chapdelaine? 97,000 tons.
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. I have to be honest, I'm not positive of whether or not the testing includes salinity testing of the town's water bodies.
Oh, there you go. Any other questions on water bodies? If not, we have a recommended vote for $55,000. All in favor of the recommended vote is printed, please. Yes? Oh, you have a question? Mike. Name and precinct.
David White, Precinct 21, Conservation Commission and Water Bodies Working Group. We primarily use the Water Bodies Fund for protection of the water bodies against invasive plants and such. We occasionally do testing for other chemicals like salt, but that's not a primary purpose of the fund. The primary purpose of the fund is to protect and enhance the health of the water bodies. Spy Pond, Hills Pond, the reservoir, and the ponds at McLennan Park.
Thank you. Mr. Warden?
John Warden, Precinct 8. The last speaker mentioned Hills Pond, and those of us who have occasion to visit Menominee Rocks Park, as I was up there yesterday with a couple of my granddaughters, the water level is still way down. I wonder if they've ever gotten around to fixing the pump or replacing the pump that used to bring a proper level of water into that pond. Anybody?
Mr. Rademacher?
Mike Rademacher, Director of Public Works. The power supply to the pump and the irrigation in the back has been severed or is no longer in service, and we've been doing an investigation to find the source of the problem there, and have not had luck finding that power break. We are working to relocate the aerating system that has been used in the pond the past few years to another power source, but the pump itself is not in service.
Thank you. Any other questions on water bodies? Seeing none, we have the recommended vote of the Finance Committee is printed in their report. As soon as Mr. Lathwood's ready, 1 for yes, 2 for no. 196 in the affirmative, 0 on the negative. It's a unanimous vote, and I so declare it. That ends Article 48, brings us to Article 49. Looks like we have the committee ready to give us a report.
Clarissa Rowe, Precinct 4, and Chair of the Community Preservation Coalition. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to request 10 minutes instead of 7. We'll try to do it in 7, but I'd just like to make sure we've got a lot of information to cover in a short period of time if town meeting would be willing.
Community Preservation Committee has requested 10 minutes of time. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? You have your 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn the first part of the show over to my esteemed vice chair, but I'd like the people on the Community Preservation Committee to please stand up and the proponents to please stand up to thank them for their work. And now I will turn it over to Eric so he can make the following presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Eric Helmuth, Vice Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. You'll need your copy of the committee report, and there's extra copies in the back if you need that for this discussion and for this vote. We're going to go through it quickly and then have as much time as you want for questions. So as the report says, the CPA is your tax dollars that fund projects in 3 areas that you see up on the screen. And that's how we think about CPA as we go through the process. Every year, by state law, we are required to, at minimum, either spend or save, to reserve, 10% of the money we have available in each of the 3 categories: community housing, open space recreation, and historic preservation. So those are the minimums. The rest of the money is flexible. We can either spend on another CPA projects or we can save it. And then a small sliver of that we can spend on some tightly circumscribed expenses of the CPA committee, which are designed to really offset the town's expenses in the CPA program as much as is permissible by law. So I know that you can't see this grid up on your screen. The purpose of that is to encourage you to find it in your reports where you can read it. I think for those of you at home, you can do a freeze frame, a screenshot, and look at it that way. So here's the summary. This is a special year, as in this is explained in the report as well. This is a bit of a special year. When we started up CPA, in the first year of collections, which was going on during fiscal year 2016, 2 things. We don't get a state match that year, and the collections were going on, but town meeting did not have access to that money last year at annual town meeting. And the reasons for that are esoteric, and if you really want to know, Clarissa can explain them. So we had to save them. So then what did we do last year when we were up here? We spent FY17 anticipated revenues, just like every other budget does here. So those were appropriated in our report, talks about what we did with that money that you spent last year. And we also then have, so this is the only year where we have 2 years worth of local receipts. We have the 16 local receipts and the coming up anticipated fiscal year 18 local receipts. So that's why there is almost double the money. Plus we have the state match from this year that's anticipated. So that's what we're expecting to have. We're suggesting and recommending that you spend it on 9 CPA projects totaling about $2.2 million. To save about $614,000, and that is a reserve, so that requires another town meeting vote in the future to spend that money on additional projects. And to appropriate about $79,000 in administrative expenses. The asterisk there is important. We don't anticipate spending anywhere near that money, and if we don't, that money rolls back over into the general CPA fund for future town meeting appropriation. The report explains some of the things that we can use those funds for if we need to. Again, it's to protect the town's operating budget from CPA whenever we can. But we didn't use much this year, maybe half, and that's what we anticipate doing again. So there are 3 groups of votes, and I think I've discussed this with the moderator and town council, that we can take these at once with the will of town meeting. They're a little complicated, but we go into each one. And I just want to explain sort of the three groups and the purpose for them. So the first group of votes is the only one that's a little tricky. And it's an accounting maneuver, but it's an important one. That we transfer $300,000 in each area to a dedicated reserve fund for each of the three CPA areas. And the reason for that is that if something happens, if we authorize a project tonight, and it gets funded, but then the project doesn't happen for some reason, and this occasionally does come up in CPA communities, that money would roll back to the general CPA fund, but what we needed to do is to roll back to one of these temporary accounts, in which case it would stay open, so that we can demonstrate to the state that we met our 10%. Remember that pie chart? So that we're not retroactively out of compliance. That's just the cleanest, simplest way to do that. What we're asking you to do is to turn right around and really in the same vote, in the second group of votes, appropriate all that money out, again, of those reserves and add it to other CPA revenues to fund the projects that Clarissa will talk about, and then to make the two transfers I talked about previously. And for that, I will turn that back over to Clarissa to talk about the wonderful projects.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. This first slide is where the projects are located in Arlington this year. The second slide is the last 2 years. So we need suggestions from Morningside and from East Arlington next year. This is the first affordable housing or community housing project that we have, which is giving $100,000 to the Housing Corporation of Arlington for their project at Downing Square. The next project is further along in the process, and we're asking for $500,000 for the 20 Westminster housing project, which will provide 9 units of affordable housing, and is on the corner of Westminster and Lowell Streets in Arlington Heights. It's the old nursery school, and they're beginning construction hopefully this summer. The next project is the old burying ground and Mount Pleasant Cemetery. This is a study to look at the condition of the structural elements of both cemeteries. It's the historic vaults in Mount Pleasant, and it's the whole cemetery itself in the old burying ground for $64,920. This is a wonderful asset in Arlington that has not had enough money devoted to it for years, and so we're trying to start that process. We expect that in future years, we're going to have construction projects out of it. This next project is the Robinstown Garden water features. This is a big study, and then the construction so that we can get water in that pool again for $643,213. Yesterday I met somebody, and he said, you know, I've got a great CPA project for you. I really think we need to get water in the garden. I said, well, come to town meeting tomorrow night. But this is a wonderful asset, and it's one that we get income from by having weddings and events there, so please think favorably about that. The next one is an update of the historic resources inventory for $115,000. This is a study that we'll get a consultant to do to look at the historic resources, the buildings in town. We hope to have 2 more studies like this, one for landscape and one for archaeological resources. But this is the first step. Sorry. This is the Spy Pond Edge and Erosion Protection Study for $552,900. This is the second phase of the study, and it's the actual construction of the projects that they studied last year. This is a wonderful project that is because of the Conservation Commission and the Park and Recreation Commission and I urge you to accept it. This next project is the Whittemore Park Revitalization Study for $65,000. This is kind of our town common, and it needs to be studied and really looked at. We've got a lot of traffic improvements in that area, and this poor park needs some real help. So this is for a study. And the last project is, the second to last project is the Millbrook Linear Park Pilot Study for $56,000. And it's a pilot study by the Mystic River Watershed to come up with a walkway along the Millbrook near Wellington Park. And we think this would be a great first step in the Millbrook master plan. The next one is the Arlington Reservoir Master Plan and Survey. Obviously, this is something that we care an awful lot about. And for $100,000, we're going to be doing the master plan, and we urge your positive vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tremblay?
Ed Tremblay, Precinct 19. Mr. Moderator, I couldn't operate my calculator keys fast enough. How much money are we spending to study things, and how much money are we spending to actually do something?
Ms. Rowe? Yeah. While they look that up, we'll come back to that question. Anyone else have a question on this? Sir?
Alan Reedy, Precinct 16. I was wondering if I could just get some details on the $643,000 that are going to be spent on restoring the reflecting pool. I know I'm cheap, but it just sounds like an awful lot of money.
Ms. Rowe?
Thank you. I will answer that question, then go back to Ed's question. The restoration of the reflecting pool and fountain in the town hall garden is an historic resource. It was designed by the Olmsted brothers. So what we're doing is an engineering and mechanical study of the pool, and I might get the assistant town manager to come up and help me with this, but we're not doing a design, we're really fixing it, going back to the old plans, but making this pool work for the long term. Jim Feeney, who stood in the pool, and we really want to make sure that the pool itself has all the mechanical systems so that we don't have to keep maintaining it. Jim, do you have anything to add?
Jim Feeney, Assistant Town Manager. I think you've covered it quite well. I think what's unique about this particular project is that there is rolled in both engineering costs, design cost, preservation consultant costs, as well as the reflecting pool construction costs itself, and then the mechanical system in the underground vault. So there's quite a few elements rolled into one project.
And one of the things I will say, having been a landscape architect for historic resources all over the Commonwealth, it seems like a lot of money. It really isn't. One of the things in the past, the Finance Committee had looked at this and put aside $100,000, and because this is what I do for work, I asked people to really look at it carefully. I work for the Friends of the Common and Garden in Boston, and their similar pools have cost, at a minimum, $800,000 for the same kind of study, for the really looking at the engineering, the mechanical systems, and making sure they work. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Then I wanted to get back to Ed's question. We have a little...
Thank you, Mr. Feeney.
We have a little over $1 million of actual construction in both the town garden water features and the Spy Pond edge. And Okay. A little over $1 million. I don't think
In
that's right.
construction costs, what about
Yeah.
studies? How much we spending on studies is the
Well,
question.
there's a disagreement among the committee.
Give us the high and low.
Okay, let's say approximately, okay, I'm wrong. They're right. $2 million for construction and $401,703 for studies.
Okay. Mr. Tremblay, any follow-up on that? No? Okay, the gentleman over here first, then Mr. Jameson.
Greg Christiana, Precinct 15. I had a question about the update to the historic resources inventory. Can Mr. Moderator, could someone speak to what the kind of range of impact that might be on the high school rebuild in the future as far as positive or negative impacts? Like, for instance, positive impacts as far as bring down costs, how much might the cost be brought down, and negative impacts, for instance, as far as something being put on the inventory that might further constrain the high school rebuild project?
Yeah, if we call it historic, can we knock it down?
Right.
Bluntly.
Thank you for the question. If you call it historic and it's on an inventory, doesn't mean that the feasibility study is going to think that this is the best possible thing to do at the high school. What this work does is it does a historic structures report for the older part of the high school, which is, as it turns out, is the part of the high school that's in the best shape. What it will do is present an option. The town would have to call it a historic resource. Because it's on the inventory, it doesn't mean it's one that you have to protect. And what we're trying to do is think about creatively how to fund that high school. And if some of the work in the area that is historic can be funded by CPA, then we would hope it would be. But it's at the beginning of the process, and the whole point of doing the historic structures report is to get the option to really look at what's being provided to the town.
Great. Thank you for the clarification, and thank you for the work. Yeah.
Jameson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. Quick question. During the discussion on the long overdue repair of the town fountain just over here, Ms. Rowe mentioned that the Finance Committee had appropriated $100,000. Would that be used for this project so we could hopefully have an extra $100,000 in the CPA?
No, sir, and I think I misspoke. I think it actually was the town manager that first put that amount in one of the future years. So I don't believe it's in their capital plan, but Al Tosti could correct me.
Have we appropriated money recently for the town fountain?
Brian, no. Brian says no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Peter Fuller, Precinct 20. It says that the Millbrook study and both of the Housing Corporation projects are conditional on a grant agreement with the town being concluded. Can you shed any light on what might be in those grant agreements to protect the town?
Mr. Himes going to tell us.
Good evening, Doug Heim, Town Council. It depends on the nature of the grant. So, for example, when we appropriate money out of CPA funds to preserve a historic resource, depending on the historic resource itself, we might ask for a preservation restriction for a certain period of years. There are some other standard conditions about how we expect the work to be accounted for, reporting requirements. It really depends on the project, but we have a suite of maybe 10 or 11 conditions to any grant that we give that depend on the nature of the work.
Another question. Both housing corporation projects talk about an affordable housing deed restriction. Would that restriction make the affordable housing in perpetuity?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it would.
Thank you. That's much better than vague, undefined, long-term affordable in a 40B project. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carl Wagner, Precinct 11. I move to terminate debate on the question.
Motion to terminate debate on Article 49. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Debate is terminated. We have before us a recommended vote of the CPA committee as printed in their report. All in favor, please press 1 when it's time. Please press 1. If you're opposed, please press 2. Under 98 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative, it's a vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 49 and brings us to Article 51. We have a recommended vote of $0 by the Finance Committee. All in favor of $0, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It's a unanimous vote of $0. That closes Article 51 and brings us to Article 52. OPEB. You got an explanation of OPEB, and anyone wish to discuss OPEB? Okay, I'm going to take a vote. All in favor, please press 1. All in favor of OPEB 444678, please press 1. All opposed, press 2. $200 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. It's a unanimous vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 52. Brings us to Article 53. We have a recommended vote of no action by Article 53. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It's a vote of no action, and I so declare it. That closes Article 53. Brings us to Article 56, use of free cash. All in favor of free cash? Anyone wish to discuss free cash? Seeing none, all in favor of free cash, $8,850,000 and some odd cents, please press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Go ahead and vote. 1 for yes for free cash, 2 for no. No free cash for you. $158 in the positive, 1 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. 155, excuse me, I misspoke. 155 in the positive. 185. God, my dyslexia got me again. 185 to 1. Still a vote, and I so declare it. And that brings us to Article 58. We have the recommended vote to move money to the Fiscal Stability Stabilization Fund, $211.136. Anyone wish to discuss putting money into the Stabilization Fund? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All in favor of the recommended vote as printed, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Go ahead and vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no. 188 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. It's unanimous vote, and I so declare it. That ends Article 58 and brings us to Article 59. We have Article 59, a resolution for sanctuary town. I just want to take 1 second and speak to this. This is a resolution. It's not a binding resolution. It's an advisory vote by the town meeting. This has caused a lot of debate and consternation among the town. There has been a fair amount of what I would term cyberbullying on the Arlington list these last couple days. That's not how town meeting acts. We vote on how people vote on all the articles, not on a single particular article. There's been threats that if someone does not vote for this, that they're going to be essentially voted out of office next time they come up. We don't like that. That's not civil. That's not how we conduct our town meeting or our civil affairs. We should assess people on how they vote on all articles, not one particular article. That being said, as I said earlier, at the beginning of the meeting and also during the selectmen's public hearing, we're going to take hear from two groups, the pros and then the cons, 10 minutes each, and then we're going to vote. At this point, everyone will hear from both parties, and they can vote their conscience on what they think is in the best interest of the town and on how they think their constituents would want them to vote. But they should not be at all swayed by any threats or cyberbullying, as I will call it, because I don't know what else to call it. All right, so the pros. Mr. Coro first. Coro, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Joseph Curo, Chair, Board of Selectmen. Mr. Moderator, fellow town meeting members. So here we are, the final chapter of the 2017 annual town meeting. We take up the article that has received by far the most attention and debate of any on our warrant this year. The Board of Selectmen was proud to co-sponsor this article with the Human Rights Commission, and we recognize the efforts of private individuals to bring similar measures to our attention. We appreciate the work that the town manager and his staff have put into the analysis of this proposal, and especially the efforts of Town Council Doug Heim, who brought to bear extensive research and his years of professional experience representing the NYPD. Throughout the winter and spring, we've received hundreds of emails, cards, letters, and calls on this issue, and our hearing on this article drew nearly 400 people to this hall. While we've heard from both sides, the overwhelming sentiment has been in support of favorable action. Accordingly, the recommended vote before you was adopted unanimously by this board. As it appears in the warrant, the article uses the term sanctuary town, and it has been popularly referred to in this manner. I wish to note, however, that in our recommended language, the word sanctuary does not appear at all, and this is intentional. Firstly, there's no consistent legal definition of a sanctuary city or sanctuary town. Secondly, it is important that we distinguish what we are discussing from the sanctuary movement of the 1980s, whereby faith communities provided material support and shelters to Central American refugees. We propose that the town do no such thing. This non-binding resolution before you is modest in scope. It is an affirmation by this body of principles of fairness to be extended to all our residents and others who come into contact with our public institutions, regardless of immigration status, ethnicity, or religion. This resolution supports existing practices of the Arlington Police Department and represents a strong statement in support of federalism. In the Federalist number 46, James Madison wrote, "The federal and state governments are in fact but different agents and trustees of the people, constituted with different powers and designed for different purposes." When extending this principle to our debate this evening, it is plain that our local police department is no more equipped or positioned to carry out the duties of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement than as our town treasurer and collector of taxes to administer the rules and functions of the Internal Revenue Service. We have spent much of this year's town meeting debating local acceptance measures whereby the Commonwealth gives municipalities the option to implement specific laws to assist in the governance of our own affairs. Is it too much to ask that the federal government extend similar courtesy? This resolution does not ask our police department or any other public official to break the law. Instead, it applauds our public safety officials for the work that they already do to protect our community from violent crime and to administer justice in a fair and impartial manner. No obstacles to that important mission are suggested or supported. The resolution also applauds current practices that shield Arlington from legal liability, not only on the basis of ethnic and religious discrimination, but also in protecting habeas corpus rights by avoiding unlawful detentions. Some have suggested that this resolution is unneeded, a symbolic action, mere words. But if words and symbols contain no meaning, we would not stand and face the flag at the beginning of each session and sing the words of our national anthem. When our voices join as one in the final crescendo, saluting the land of the free and the home of the brave, we publicly remind ourselves and our constituents why we are here and what draws us together. Recent articles in the Boston Globe and New York Times describe how many victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, both documented and undocumented immigrants and refugees, have increasingly avoided seeking help or filing restraining orders. The Times writes that the number of Latinos reporting rapes in Houston has fallen by more than 40% this year from the same period last year. In Los Angeles, this population has registered a 10% drop in domestic violence reports and a 25% decline in sexual assault claims, a development that the police chief attributes to fear of the federal government. The Globe cites similar stories from officials at Boston Medical Center and other Massachusetts organizations that assist survivors of domestic violence. While we know that there should be nothing to fear for such victims in the town of Arlington, we need to amplify that message. This evening, we have an opportunity to state our position loud and clear so that impacted members of our community hear it. As one of my favorite Arlingtonians, Elaine Shea, frequently reminds us, we all need to be upstanders. One of the most common objections to the resolution before us has been based on the fear of losing federal financial support. Despite proclamations of the administration in Washington to the contrary, these fears have been overstated. There is ample case law striking down the legality of coercing state and local authorities into adopting and administering specific policies as a condition of funding when there is no direct connection between the funding program and the policy in question. Arlington receives no federal assistance for immigration enforcement, and accordingly, our risk exposure approaches zero. This reading of the law was only strengthened with last month's ruling in a case brought by San Francisco and Santa Clara County. Now, many of our federal funds are at risk, but for reasons having nothing to do with this resolution. Our school committee reported to this town meeting an expected drop in Title I grant funding, which serves school populations with high numbers of students from low-income families. This reduced funding is as a result of our shifting income eligibility. Nothing we do here changes that fact. Earlier this evening, we voted to endorse a plan for the use of community development block grant funding. If recommendations of the president's so-called skinny budget are adopted, the CDBG program will disappear for all communities, regardless of sanctuary status. This past weekend, there were multiple reports of the proposed elimination of the Drug-Free Communities program. We receive a DFC grant that supports the Arlington Youth Health and Safety Coalition and important initiatives of our police department and others, including our successful prescription drug take-back program, which helps tackle the opioid epidemic, and our compliance checks of liquor stores and restaurants to prevent alcohol sales to underage minors. Like proposed CDBG cuts, elimination of federal funding for youth substance abuse prevention is also an equal opportunity withdrawal of support from Washington to municipalities across the nation. Nothing to do with sanctuary status. Now, I realize that for some, legal arguments and evidence of our shrinking exposure to discriminatory federal cutbacks may not be sufficient. I submit that it is reasonable to think that perhaps, just perhaps, threats against sanctuary jurisdictions have been overstated. As Exhibit A, we can look to this past weekend's federal budget deal, which provided $25.7 million to New York City, the largest sanctuary city in the nation, as reimbursement for providing security to the first family. Now, like it or not, we're taking part in a much broader national debate. In an op-ed that was published this morning, U.S. Senator John McCain wrote, "Human rights exist above the state and beyond history. They cannot be rescinded by one government any more than they can be granted by another. They inhabit the human heart, and from there, though they may be abridged, they can never be extinguished." At the end of the day, town meeting is being asked to express an opinion in support of fair and impartial treatment of all the individuals whom we serve. We're being asked to uphold current community policing practices and to honor our men and women in blue. It is unconscionable that this town meeting might succumb to an empty threat of economic sanctions and decline to register our opinion in the face of the chilling effect of legally specious executive orders. The Constitution supports us in this, and it's time for us to stand for what is right. The Board of Selectmen respectfully, unanimously, and enthusiastically requests your support of the recommended vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With the opponents, Mr. Manju.
Joe Manju, Precinct 17. All town meeting members have taken an oath of office. In that oath, we've all pledged to vote in the best interest of the town. Please ask yourself, is declaring Arlington a sanctuary community in the best interest of the town? Consider that illegal immigration encourages human trafficking. New England has been a hotbed of human trafficking, with nail salons and massage parlors fronting prostitution rings. Even our own quiet town has experienced its share of human trafficking. A September 2014 headline states, Arlington police and feds shut down alleged human trafficking prostitution ring. Do you remember that news story? I certainly do. Is a vote that encourages human trafficking in the best interest of our town? The 2008 Arlington Annual Report described a drug bust in Arlington that resulted in the arrest of 2 illegal aliens with multiple identifications and lengthy criminal records. More than 50 grams of heroin was seized. Please don't be lulled into a false sense of security because of fewer news stories reporting such crimes. These crimes are as prevalent as ever. The only difference now is that the immigration status of the offenders is oftentimes concealed. Is offering sanctuary to criminal drug dealers in the best interest of the town? A headline from January 2016 informs us that multiple MS-13 members with ties to murders and drug trafficking are arrested in Somerville. MS-13 is a multinational criminal organization dubbed the most dangerous gang in the world. Is offering sanctuary to murderous MS-13 gang members in the best interest of the town? Criminals aren't always as vicious as MS-13 gang members, but they can be just as deadly. Let's not forget the 2011 dragging death of 23-year-old Matthew Denise of Milford, Massachusetts. An illegal alien in a drunken stupor ran a stop sign, colliding with motorcyclist Denise, resulting in Matthew's death. Despite being convicted on numerous charges, the perpetrator of the crime could be released from prison in as little as 10 years and re-enter society. Matthew Denise, however, is not as fortunate. More recently, a series of rapes, murders, and other serious crimes in Massachusetts can be attributed to illegal immigrants. In March 2016, a young couple in Framingham was attacked by 4 illegal aliens. The man was beaten and threatened with death, and the woman was raped. 2 of the illegal immigrants had previously been deported. In September 2016, a twice-deported illegal immigrant living in New Bedford shot his daughter in the face and back for snubbing him on Father's Day. In March of this year, the body of a Worcester teacher's aide was found strangled in her apartment. A career criminal in the U.S. illegally was charged with her murder. And on Thursday of last week, a news report from Holyoke states that an illegal immigrant pleaded guilty to 2 counts of child rape and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. The incidents are related, all happened in Massachusetts. This is not fiction. It is deadly serious. And if you would like to know who pays the legal expenses of all these vicious criminals, simply look in the mirror. It is our responsibility as town meeting members to prevent events like this from ever happening in Arlington. Bristol County Sheriff Thomas Hodgson recently called for leaders of sanctuary cities to be arrested and held liable if circumstances warrant. This could happen here. Be advised, if you vote in favor of Article 59, you own it. Is inviting vicious criminals into Arlington in the best interest of the town. Diseases that were recently near eradication are making a comeback in the U.S. These include tuberculosis, measles, whooping cough, and even bubonic plague, and I don't find that funny. Illegal aliens allowed to ignore the vetting process are able to gain access to our country with no concern for our health or safety. Is it in the best interest of Arlington to invite these diseases into our community? Many in the hall tonight oppose the development of the Mugar property because of the strain that will be placed on our school system. Yet the same people advocate throwing down a welcome mat for illegal immigrants. Where do you think these children will be educated? Illegal immigrants without valid birth certificates can lie about their age. This means, as it happened in Lynn, Massachusetts, that 30-something-year-olds could be assigned to the classroom with your child. Consider that your child's ability to learn could be impacted by limited English proficiency. English is not the first language of 11.5% of the students in Arlington. These students are taught by English language learner teachers. Our schools are cutting much needed teacher positions so they can fill more ELL positions. Education of illegal immigrants represents 59% of all the money spent for this population, far exceeding health, Medicaid, and welfare benefits. This directly takes away from your child's education. Is it in the best interest of our children to increase the number of students in Arlington schools via a sanctuary community? In 2011, the local expenditures on illegal aliens in Massachusetts was $1.862 billion. In order to pay for these escalating costs, property taxes, as well as other forms of taxation and fees, will dramatically increase. Mayor Kennedy of the city of Lynn reports that Lynn has been ordered to vaccinate and educate 248 immigrants. 126 aliens speak only a tribal language and are illiterate. Lynn's budget is broken. School costs are up 10%, necessitating cuts in other departments and union positions. The rainy day fund of $16.5 million is exhausted. The school system and health departments are overwhelmed. Police programs to reduce gangs had to be cut back due to lack of funds. A tuberculosis clinic had to be implemented, and there is no respite in sight. Arlington Police already act as if Arlington was a sanctuary community, so why the need to identify ourselves as such? Declaring this would have the effect of painting a target on our back and daring the federal government to reduce funding to our town. We may be able to fight any reduction in funding coming from Washington, but at what cost? Unchecked illegal immigration is a public safety issue that puts residents at risk of both drug and human trafficking and violent criminal gangs. Unchecked illegal immigration is a public health issue that puts residents at risk of contracting harmful infectious diseases. Unchecked illegal immigration is an economic issue that costs taxpayers money to support public safety and health initiatives, and dramatically increases costs to Arlington schools. It may also substantially hurt Arlington's ability to secure federal funds. Numerous Arlington residents are seeking to have their voices heard on this sanctuary community issue. I strongly appeal to town meeting and the Board of Selectmen to put this issue before the entire town for a vote. A no vote on Article 59 from town meeting tonight will go a long way toward making that a reality. The town meeting oath of office contains the phrases, "I do solemnly swear," and "so help me God." The oath is in fact a sacred oath. It is also a legally binding oath. Please do not take it lightly. We have all pledged to vote in the best interests of the town, not in the best interests of those who seek refuge in Arlington. Please consider the rights of your neighbors and their children before voting on Article 59. Your freely taken oath does not afford you the luxury to vote in a manner that feels good. It requires that you vote in the best interest of the residents of Arlington. I strongly urge you to join with me in voting no on Article 59. If you find you cannot vote in a manner that does not violate your oath of office, it is far better that you abstain from voting. Please do not violate your oath of office. A no vote on Article 59 would be a vote in the best interest of the town.
Thank you. Okay. Shh, quiet. All right, we're ready for a vote, Mr. Lathwood. If you support the, what's your information point? They've known for months that we're not going to have debate on this article. I made it clear during the selectmen's meeting held in this room where they had over 2 hours of questioning. I made it clear on the first day of town meeting we're not going to have debate. We're going to have presentations by both sides of the article. It's a non-binding resolution that is beyond our normal budgets, zoning bylaws, and bylaws. So it's before us. We're going to vote on it. We're going to vote now. If you are in favor of the recommended vote of the Board of Selectmen as printed in their report under Article 59, you'll press 1 for yes, 2 for no. So if you want the recommended vote, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. And it's as printed in their report. It's an affirmative vote. One. Come on, hey. Shh. Please. I got to announce the vote. 173 in the positive, 19 in the negative. It is a vote, and I so declare it. Mr. Tosti.
I move that Article 3 be taken from the table.
All in favor of taking Article 3 from the table, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? Article 3 is on the table.
I move that this
Off
town...
the table. It's off the table, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move that this town meeting be dissolved.
All in favor of dissolving the 2017 annual town meeting, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? The town meeting is dissolved. Please return your clickers. Please return your clickers. Don't bring them home tonight. Return